On my 75th birthday, my son dumped me at a nursing home. No warning, no emotion, just a cold statement that cut deeper than any wound I'd ever known. You're dead weight, Dad. Time to face reality. His voice didn't tremble, not even once. It was the same voice I used to hear calling me hero when he was 6, when I'd lift him onto my shoulders after a long day's work. Now that same voice was dismantling the last pieces of my dignity. He pushed a stack of commitment papers across the kitchen table, the same table where I'd taught him long division, where we'd eaten Sunday pancakes with Margaret humming softly in the background. My hands shook as I stared at those papers, not from age, but from disbelief. I didn't argue, didn't beg. Somewhere inside, I think I already knew this day would come. Instead, I reached for the framed photo of Margaret on the mantel, the one Derek was about to pack away like another obsolete belonging. Her smile still carried warmth, still felt like home. Your mother would be ashamed, I said quietly, more to myself than to him. Derek laughed. Actually laughed. Mom's been dead 3 years, Dad. Time to stop living in the past. He tossed a crumpled $5 bill across the table, the paper landing beside my trembling fingers. Buy yourself some candy at that place. Outside, an ambulance idled in the driveway. Its flashing lights painted our walls in sterile red and blue. My son didn't even walk me to the door. He just turned his back, phone already in hand, typing, scrolling, busy with his future. 7 days later, that crumpled $5 bill would become $4.2 million. But the money, as I'd soon learn, was only the beginning. What Derek did next almost destroyed us both. Sunnybrook Nursing Home smelled of bleach, loneliness, and forgotten birthdays. The walls were the color of watered-down oatmeal, and the hum of fluorescent lights never stopped. Derek had researched the cheapest facility within 50 miles. Your son was very specific about the budget, the intake coordinator told me, without looking up. Patricia Webb, her name tag read mid-40s, tired eyes, the kind of indifference born from repetition. She went through the motions like a machine. Shared room, cafeteria meals, basic medical monitoring. No therapy, no activities, no dignity. But she didn't mention that last part. My roommate was Frank Castellano, former municipal judge, still sharp as the day he retired. When I entered, he barely glanced up from his newspaper. Let me guess, he muttered. Son or daughter decided you were too expensive to keep around. Son, I said, figures. Daughters usually visit longer, feel guilty more. Sons treat it like a business transaction. He lowered the paper and looked at me over his glasses. What's his excuse? Says I'm dead weight. Needs to liquidate assets for his future. Frank snorted. Liquidate assets. Lawyer talk. Your boy in the legal profession. Harvard Law. Class of 2001. Figures. I sentenced plenty of those. Smart enough to find loopholes. Dumb enough to think they won't get caught. That first night, lying on a mattress, thin as Derek's compassion, I pulled out a spiral notebook Margaret had given me years ago. For your important thoughts, she'd said, back when my thoughts mattered to someone. My hand hesitated before touching pen to paper. Writing about Derek's betrayal hurt too much. So, I wrote about her instead. March 15th, 2021. 3 years ago today. Margaret died while I was at Derek's office, signing papers to co-sign his second mortgage. Missed her last breath because my son needed money more than my wife needed her husband. The irony seared through me. Margaret had warned me about Derek's growing coldness, his hunger for success that trampled everything in its way. "You're creating a monster, Harold," she'd said softly one night. "Stop paying his way through life." I'd dismissed her fears. Mothers worry too much. I told myself Derek was just ambitious, driven. Now, 3 years after her death, I was finally seeing what she'd seen all along. Tuesday brought Derek's first call. His voice carried that artificial brightness reserved for unwanted obligations. "How's the adjustment going, Dad?" "Fine, great," I lied. "Good. Listen, I drove by the house yesterday. The lawn looks terrible, and a gutter came down in the storm. I've got a crew coming Thursday to handle maintenance. Get everything ready for market." He said it so casually, like selling our home of 48 years was no different than selling an old car. "For market," I repeated quietly. "Dad, we have to be practical. Property taxes alone are 12 grand a year. Insurance, utilities, it's bleeding money. Bleeding money." I looked around at the sterile walls, the cheap sheets, the smell of bleach burning my throat. What about the years I'd spent building that home, board by board, brick by brick? What about my workshop? I asked. Silence. Then, Dad, be realistic. All those tools, that old woodworking equipment tits, not worth moving. The estate sale company will handle everything. Everything. 40 years of memories. The lathe where I'd carved table legs for Margaret's dining set. The saw that built Derek's childhood treehouse. Gone, of course, I murmured. It's not like you'll need that stuff anymore. Not like I'd need memories anymore. Not like craftsmanship mattered in a world that measured worth by profit margins. Wednesday afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Not Derek, he was too busy liquidating my life, but Miranda. She looked out of place in her elegant coat and expensive heels, sitting stiffly on the cracked vinyl chair beside my bed. "Harold," she said gently, "I wanted to check on you personally." "That's kind of you, Miranda." She fidgeted with her Louis Vuitton bag, eyes darting to the clock on the wall. "Derek's been stressed. The house sale, work pressure, financial planning. He's not sleeping well." Financial planning. I smiled faintly. Interesting euphemism for spending money that isn't his yet. Her expression faltered. "I'm sure it's challenging." She hesitated, then leaned forward, her voice lowering. "Harold, can I ask you something? Are you okay with all this? The move, the house sale, everything?" For a moment, I saw something real in her eyes, guilt, maybe, or pity. "What choice do I have, Miranda?" I said softly. She was quiet for a long moment. "Derek doesn't know I'm here. He thinks I'm at yoga." "Why are you here, then?" "Because," she exhaled, struggling for words, "because this feels wrong. You raised him, sacrificed for him, and now he's moving on." I finished for her. "That's what children do. Not like this," she whispered, looking around at the sterile room, the peeling paint. "Not abandoning you." Her phone buzzed. Derek's name lit up the screen. She flinched. "I should go," she said quickly, standing. "But Harold, if you need anything at all, please call me." She pressed a business card into my hand. Miranda Webb, Financial Planning and Asset Management. As she walked away, I looked down at that card, her perfume lingering faintly in the air. Something about her visit, about the tension in her voice, felt like more than guilt. It felt like the first tremor before a storm, because something told me what Derek did next wasn't just selfish, it was criminal, and I wasn't done being his father yet. After Miranda left, I sat alone in the dim hum of room 237. The rain starting to whisper against the window pane like it was trying to tell me something I already knew. I studied the business card she'd pressed into my hand. Miranda Richardson, Thornfield, CFP, Certified Financial Planner. Clean serif font. Confident paper stock. Someone who understood numbers, laws, investments, ... Someone who might just understand what was about to happen to Derek's carefully constructed little empire of lies. I turned the card over, tracing the embossed gold letters with my thumb, and felt a strange calm settle over me. For the first time since Margaret's funeral, I wasn't just existing. I was thinking, planning. I pulled out my spiral notebook, the one with Margaret's name faded across the inside cover, and began to write every word Miranda had said, every pause, every flicker of guilt in her eyes, recorded with timestamps like evidence. I didn't know yet what I was building, only that it needed to be documented. Frank watched from his bed, his glasses low on his nose. "Daughter-in-law, feeling guilty," he muttered. "Something like that," I said, without looking up. He gave a soft chuckle. "Smart woman. Smarter than your son. Probably, definitely smarter. You thinking what I think you're thinking." I looked up at Margaret's photo on my nightstand, her soft smile illuminated by the flickering fluorescent bulb overhead. Then my eyes drifted to the crumpled $5 bill in my wallet, the one Derek had tossed at me like I was a beggar. I held it between my fingers, flattening its creases. "Margaret always said patience was a virtue, Frank." Frank leaned back, folding his arms. "And what else did she say?" "That someday Derek would learn the difference between the price of everything and the value of nothing." Frank's mouth curved into a faint smile. "Sounds like a wise woman." "The wisest," I whispered. Outside, the storm clouds thickened, swallowing the last of the daylight. The rain hadn't started yet, but I could smell it, that sharp metallic scent that always came before thunder. Somewhere deep inside me, something shifted. The air felt heavier, the silence sharper. In room 237, I was perfectly calm, but I knew the real storm was only 4 days away. Thursday evening, the phone rang. Derek's name flashed on the tiny nursing home display. My pulse slowed, not from dread, but curiosity. I knew that tone he used when he was cornered, clipped, brisk, with a false note of confidence. "Dad, we've got a problem," he said immediately. No greeting. "Miranda's been asking questions about your finances. Apparently, she found some old bank statements and wants to review our ... approach to your care situation." I forced my voice to stay steady. "What kind of questions?" "The nosy kind. She's throwing around words like fiduciary responsibility, elder care standards, legal obligations, all that touchy-feely stuff." His tone was laced with irritation, but beneath it, there was something else, worry. Miranda had kept her word. She hadn't called me. She'd gone straight for Derek's jugular. "Maybe she's just concerned," I said. "Concerned?" Derek gave a sharp laugh. "Dad, Miranda's a financial planner. When she gets concerned, it means she thinks someone's breaking laws. She's already pulled credit reports, bank records, even Sunnybrook's inspection ratings. My pulse quickened. What did she find? Nothing. Because there's nothing to find. But she's acting like I'm some kind of criminal for making practical decisions about your care. Practical decisions, I murmured. Derek's favorite euphemism for selfishness. What exactly is she questioning? Everything, he snapped. The nursing home choice, the house sale timeline. He paused, and in that pause, I heard something new in my son's voice. Fear. She's even asking about your mental competency evaluation. I sat up. What mental competency evaluation? The one Sunnybrook required for admission. Standard procedure for all residents. But Miranda's treating it like some kind of smoking gun. This was news to me. Derek had never mentioned any evaluation. What did it show? Perfect cognitive function. Of course, you're sharp as ever, Dad. That's not the point. The point is, she's making this more complicated than it needs to be. Perfect cognitive function. So I wasn't senile or unfit. Derek had committed a perfectly competent father, not for safety, but for convenience. Miranda would know the legal implications of that. Maybe, I said slowly, you should listen to her concerns. I am listening. Derek's voice rose. But she doesn't understand the big picture, the financial pressures, the market timing, the opportunity costs of keeping that house empty. Opportunity costs. He was drowning in business jargon, as if dressing his cruelty in corporate language could make it moral. What opportunity costs? I asked. He hesitated. Dad, I haven't told you this because... I didn't want to worry you, but I'm in a bit of a financial bind. I felt a chill creep up my spine. How bad? The divorce from Rachel, you remember? 3 years ago, it was... expensive. Ongoing alimony, legal fees, credit damage. I closed my eyes. How expensive, Derek? Silence. Then, finally, $150,000 a year. For 7 more years. My breath caught. $1 million, I whispered. Why didn't you tell me? Because there was nothing you could do about it, he snapped. Your pension barely covers your own expenses. I mean, before the nursing home situation. Before the nursing home situation, as though my exile were a natural disaster. An unfortunate but necessary cost. How are you managing payments that large? Another pause. Then, carefully, credit lines, business loans, other arrangements. Something in his tone made my skin crawl. What other arrangements? Dad, I don't want to burden you with details. The point is, selling your house isn't just about your care costs. It's about keeping our family financially stable. Our family. The audacity of it almost made me laugh. My home, the one I'd built for Margaret, paid for with 40 years of sweat and splinters, was being sacrificed to cover Derek's debts and alimony. I see, I said quietly. No, you don't, he snapped, panic creeping into his voice. You can't see because you don't understand modern financial pressures. Rachel's attorney bled me dry, and Miranda's parents co-signed our current mortgage. If I default, Derek, I interrupted, how much debt are you carrying? I can't, he said. Look, the house sale fixes everything. $890,000 clears the worst of it, gives us breathing room, sets up a sustainable budget for your care. $890,000. My life's work reduced to a line item on his balance sheet. And if the house doesn't sell quickly, I asked. The silence that followed told me everything. Derek, I said softly, are you gambling? What? No, God, no. Dad, I'm a lawyer, not some degenerate. Are you sure? He hesitated. I play poker sometimes. Business, networking, stress relief. Nothing serious. How much? Dad, this is insulting. I don't have a gambling problem. I have a cash flow problem. Temporary, manageable, easily solved by liquidating underperforming assets. Underperforming assets. That was me now, his father, reduced to a poor investment. Miranda knows about the gambling, I said. There's nothing to know. His composure cracked. And if she keeps digging around, asking questions, she's going to make everything worse. Some things are better left private. Private from your wife. Private from everyone. There it was, the fear. The unraveling. Dad, he pleaded, I need you to talk to her. Tell her you're happy with the arrangements, that you trust my judgment. Can you do that for me? I stared at the wall, the phone warm against my ear. Tell Miranda I was happy being abandoned so my son could pay off his debts. Tell her I trusted the judgment of a man who'd just confessed to financial desperation. Of course, Derek, I said quietly. Whatever you need. He exhaled hard, relief pouring through the line. Thank you, God, thank you. You don't know how much pressure I'm under. When the call ended, the silence in the room felt heavier than before. Frank pretended to sleep, but his voice came low in the dark. Your boy's in deeper than you thought, Harold. Much deeper. Gambling debts, among other things. I nodded, slowly. Yes, he's drowning. And he decided to use you as the life preserver, Frank murmured. I sat in the plastic chair, the storm finally breaking outside, rain lashing the window like punishment. I opened my notebook again, the pages already dense with notes. Derek's admissions, Miranda's investigation, the hidden evaluation. I wrote it all down. It means, I said slowly, that Derek didn't abandon me for greed. He abandoned me for survival. Frank watched me. Does that make it better or worse? I looked at Margaret's photo, then at that crumpled $5 bill, the one symbol of his contempt. It makes it different, Frank, much more complicated. He smiled faintly. You still planning to buy that lottery ticket tomorrow? I closed the notebook, the storm roaring louder now, lightning flashing like judgment across the hills. More than ever, I said, but not for the reasons I thought. Because this time, I wasn't calm. This time, I was angry. Not just at Derek's betrayal, but at the weakness that had created it. And somewhere deep inside me, the part that Margaret used to call the quiet fire. I knew this was only the beginning. I remember the tremor in Margaret's voice the night she tried to warn me. 3 years ago, she sat by the window in her pale blue nightgown, the one that always smelled faintly of lavender, and told me our son was changing. Harold, she'd said quietly, he's becoming someone we won't recognize. I brushed it off back then, thought she was just tired, maybe overly emotional from the chemo. But Margaret was never wrong about people. Never tonight. Under the dim lamp of my room in Sunnybrook, I flipped through my old leather notebook, the one with her handwriting tucked between my notes like ghosts of our conversations. There it was, an entry from her final months. Derek treats family like business now. Every gesture must yield profit, every conversation an angle. She'd begged me to stop enabling him, said I was teaching him that other people existed to absorb his mistakes, to soften his landings. I touched her photograph on my nightstand, her smile frozen in summer light, the curve of her lips hiding all the patience it took to love me and our flawed son. The day she died, I wasn't there. I was at Derek's office, co-signing his second mortgage. She took her last breath alone, because I was too busy saving the man who would later let her die forgotten. Frank sat quietly across from me, his old hands folded on his lap. "That's a heavy burden to carry," he murmured. "I've carried it for 3 years," I said. "Every night, wondering if she'd still be alive if I hadn't gone to that office, if I'd noticed the signs sooner, called the ambulance earlier." Frank shook his head. "You can't live in the past, Harold." "I can't bring her back," I replied softly, "but I can do something about Derek." That's when it crystallized, the decision, the one that had been forming ever since the funeral, where Derek gave a perfect eulogy about family values while checking his phone for stock updates. Margaret had been right all along. I was his safety net, and because of me, he never learned how to swim. Frank looked up. "So, what's the plan?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out a crumpled $5 bill, the same one Derek had tossed at me last week when I'd asked him to pay back a small loan. He'd laughed, said, "That's all you'll ever get from me, old man." Margaret used to say, "The universe has a sense of irony." So maybe it was time to test that theory. At exactly 2 p.m., Derek arrived, his first visit since he'd practically dumped me in this place. He looked different now, hollowed eyes, gray circles beneath them, a man devoured by desperation. "Dad," he said breathlessly, "thank God you agreed to see me." I offered a calm nod. "Of course. I talked to Miranda last night." He winced. "She's threatening to leave if I don't come clean about our financial situation." Derek slumped into the visitor's chair. She found the credit card. Statements, poker games, Atlantic City, some private tables with other lawyers. "It's not as bad as it looks," he stammered. "Miranda doesn't get it. Poker's skill-based. I'm up over the long term." "How much?" I asked quietly. He hesitated. "Maybe 40 or 50,000 over 2 years. Nothing I can't recover." But his eyes betrayed him. I'd known Derek long enough to recognize the twitch in his jaw when he lied. Whatever the real number was, it was far higher, and the other debts, I pressed. Business loans, credit lines, Rachel. Derek rubbed his temples. "Dad, I need that house sale. If it doesn't close by the end of the month, I lose everything. The practice, the house, Miranda, the kids." For the first time in a long while, I almost pitied him. Not enough to forgive him, but enough to remember that he was still my son. "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" I asked. "Because I'm supposed to be successful," he snapped. "I'm a Harvard lawyer with a 6-figure income. I shouldn't need my 75-year-old father to bail me out again." That word, again, landed like a hammer blow. "How many times have I bailed you out, Derek?" He looked away. "That's not. This is different. College," I said. "Your first house, the startup, the divorce, the second house." His voice deflated with each memory. "Maybe half a dozen times. Half a dozen times I've taught you that failure has no consequences, that Daddy will always fix it." "Dad, please," he said, almost whispering. "Now I can turn this around. Once the house sale goes through, I'll have a clean slate." I stood and walked to the window. His BMW sat gleaming in the lot below, a $90,000 lease parked over a man drowning in debt. "Do you remember what your mother said to you the last time we bailed you out?" He frowned. Mom said a lot of things. She said, "One day, your father won't be there to catch you. What will you do then?" Derek didn't answer. "Well," I said, turning toward him, "that day is today." I pulled the $5 bill from my pocket and held it up. He scoffed. "Dad, please don't lecture me about money. $5 isn't going to. I'm going to buy a lottery ticket." He laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "A lottery ticket? Dad, the odds are 24 million to 1. "I know," I said, smiling faintly. "But your mother used to say hope was worth more than odds. She never played the lottery." "No," I agreed. "But she believed in consequences, in irony, and in the idea that sometimes the universe gives you exactly what you need when you least deserve it." He frowned. "What does that even mean?" "It means, son," I said, folding the bill neatly, "that in about 6 hours, we'll find out if 45 years of enabling you was the biggest mistake of my life. I don't understand." "You will." After Derek left, Frank wheeled himself beside me as I prepared to walk down to the gas station. "You really think you're going to win?" he asked. "Frank," I said quietly, "I think the universe has been setting up this moment for 3 years, ever since Margaret died, trying to warn me. And if you don't win, then I'll die knowing I finally stopped enabling my son's self-destruction. And if you do," I looked at Margaret's photo one last time, "then Derek learns what she always wanted him to understand, that love without boundaries isn't love at all." I stepped into the cool evening air. The $5 bill felt warm in my pocket, pulsing like a heartbeat, and in the faint whisper of the wind, I could almost hear her voice. "It's time, Harold. It's finally time." Friday night, 11:47 p.m. Room was empty, except for the hum of the old television and the smell of disinfectant. Frank sat beside me, his wheelchair squeaking as he leaned closer. "You really picked random numbers." "Not random," I said, holding up the ticket. "Margaret's birthday, Derek's birthday, our wedding anniversary, the day she died, and the mega ball. Derek's age when he stopped visiting her in the hospital." He blinked. 42. The numbers rolled out, one by one, on the television screen. 07, 15, 23, 31, 42. And the mega ball, 04. Frank's eyes widened. Then he looked at my ticket, then back at the screen. "Harold, you just won." I nodded slowly, heart pounding in stunned silence. 4.2 million, I whispered. "The universe really does have a sense of humor. Family helps family." The words tasted bitter on my tongue. A phrase that once meant love, now twisted into a demand, a weapon. Derek stood there in my small Sunnybrook room, his designer suit wrinkled, his tie hanging loose, desperation flickering behind the charm he'd practiced his entire life. The storm outside cast shifting shadows on the linoleum floor, and for a long moment, all I could hear was the faint hum of the fluorescent lights and Derek's unsteady breathing. "Dad," he said again, softer this time, as if gentleness could rewrite the past. "You've always said we take care of each other. You helped me when Mom died, when the business went through that rough patch, when you lied." I interrupted quietly. My voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. "When you forged my signature on the business line of credit, when you sold Margaret's jewelry to cover poker losses, when you left her to die alone while I was at your office, signing your second mortgage." Derek froze. His jaw clenched, but his eyes darted toward the window, the same boyish tick he'd had when he was 12, and caught stealing from his mother's purse. "That's not fair," he said finally, his voice trembling. "You don't know how hard things got after she passed." "Oh, I know exactly how hard they got," I said. "I lived it. The difference is, I didn't make my pain everyone else's responsibility." He stepped closer. "Dad, please. You can't just abandon me like this. You have the money, 2.6 million. You said yourself, the universe gave you that miracle. Maybe this is the miracle. Maybe this is how we fix everything." The way he said "we" made my stomach turn. That word "we" had always meant "you do the work, Dad, and I'll take the credit." I watched his hands tremble, not from shame, but from withdrawal, from the high of crisis and the rush of a potential bailout. "Fix everything," I repeated. "You still think money fixes what's broken in you, don't you? Don't lecture me," he snapped, voice cracking with a mix of fear and fury. "You think you're better than me. You think this place makes you some saintly martyr. You live in a nursing home, Dad, alone, forgotten, and I'm trying to build something for this family, for your grandchildren. Your children are already afraid of you," I said softly. "They see the calls, they hear the fights, they know that shut him up." The thunder rolled again outside, like the world itself punctuating the silence between us. I let it stretch long enough for him to feel the weight of it, long enough for me to gather the courage to say what came next. "Derek," I said finally, "when your mother was dying, she made me promise her one thing." He frowned. "What are you talking about?" She told me, "When Derek falls, and he will fall, don't catch him. Let him hit the ground. It's the only way he'll learn to stand." His face twisted with anger, confusion, maybe even guilt. "That's cruel. She'd never say that. She said it with tears in her eyes," I whispered. "And for 3 years, I've been breaking that promise. Every check, every signature, every lie I pretended not to see. But not anymore." He stepped closer, his shadow falling across mine. "You're really going to just watch me drown? You've been drowning for years," I said. "I've just been the one holding your head above water." For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. I could see it in his eyes, the calculation, the desperate flicker of strategy forming behind the panic. "You can't do this," he said finally, voice low. "If you don't help me, they'll come after me, after Miranda, after the kids." "They already have," I said. "And it's because you never stopped gambling. You told me you'd hit rock bottom 6 times, Derek. Maybe this time you'll finally dig deep enough to touch the floor." He slammed his hand on the nightstand, making Margaret's photo frame rattle. "You think this is justice? You think this is what Mom would have wanted? You're condemning your own son." I stood, slowly, feeling the ache in my knees, the weight of 75 years pressing down on my bones. But my voice, when it came, was steady. "I'm saving the man she loved from the monster he's become." Derek's face changed then. The pleading drained away, leaving something colder, a flicker of recognition, of hatred. "You're enjoying this," he said. "You think this makes you righteous?" "No," I said. "It makes me free." For the first time since Margaret's death, I felt something break loose inside me. Not anger, not sadness, but release. I walked to the window and looked down at the parking lot where Derek's BMW idled, headlights cutting through the rain. "You still have choices," I said, without turning around. "They're just finally yours to make." Behind me, I heard him exhale, shakily. "You'll regret this," he whispered. "Maybe," I said. But at least this time, the regret will be honest. The door slammed behind him. The sound echoed through the sterile hallways of Sunnybrook, fading into the hum of the storm. Frank, from his bed, finally spoke. "That went about as bad as it could have," I smiled faintly. "No, Frank, that went exactly how it needed to." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating Margaret's photo on the nightstand. For the first time in years, her smile didn't make me ache. It made me feel proud. Friday was coming. So was Derek's reckoning. And the universe, I suspected, was just getting started. That evening, Frank and I sat in our new apartment, a modest space, but our own. I'd moved out of Sunnybrook once the lottery money gave me choices. "Think he'll make it?" Frank asked. I looked out the window at the quiet street below. "I think he's finally learning the difference between failing and falling." "What's the difference?" I glanced at Margaret's photo on the mantel. Her smile, faint and forgiving, seemed to know the answer already. "Failing is temporary," I said. "Falling teaches you how to stand up." Frank nodded slowly. "Any regrets?" "Only one," I said, after a long silence. "That it took me 75 years to understand that love isn't rescuing someone, it's trusting them to rescue themselves." Outside, spring arrived quietly. New growth, fresh starts, second chances, not given, but earned. Derek was learning to stand. Miranda was learning to trust. Their children were learning that actions have consequences. And I was learning that sometimes the kindest thing a father can do is step back. Margaret would have been proud of us both.